Hey everyone, it's Bruni and welcome to my first video of 2022. Hope you guys had an awesome New Year's. Today we're kicking off the first installment of my monthly updates video where I talk about the business over the last month, what worked, what didn't, any updates financially or operationally. Really just give a raw look at what it takes to build a business and not sugarcoat anything. So you're gonna see the good, the bad, and the ugly that hopefully we can all learn from in real time. And since this channel only launched a month ago and it's the beginning of the new year, I figured it would be great to share the lessons I learned in 2021 and then talk about my big picture plans for 2022. Then at the end, I'll share the business updates from the last month and also share what I'm looking to accomplish in the month ahead. All right, so those of you who don't know my full story, I would check out the Get to Know Me video linked up here somewhere. But long story long is at the end of December 2020, I left what I thought was my dream job to basically take a gap year and figure out what it is that I wanted to do with my life. I was super unsatisfied at my old job. I had just met a bunch of financial goals. I had helped my parents pay off a ton of debt and get their life back. And I had enough money sitting aside that I felt comfortable taking some time to really think about what it is that I wanted out of life. I moved out of my New York City apartment, moved back to Long Island with my parents, kept my expenses low, and just kind of hung out to see what it is that I naturally was inclined to do. And I'm really glad that I did this because it really allowed me to figure out what is most important to me personally, as opposed to the things that were important from an optics perspective. And I think deep down I knew kind of what they were, but it's really easy to get distracted by the world out there. But at the end of the day, when I took all that away and just kind of sat with myself, what was really most important is, do I feel good? Am I with the right people? And do I have something somewhat meaningful to work on? And now in 2022, I feel like I have all those things. The second thing I learned is that it doesn't matter how far down a path you are. If you realize it's the wrong direction or the wrong path, you need to turn back immediately. And this could be really difficult because if you sunk a lot of time and effort into something, you don't want to throw it all away. You want to make it work, right? And I had spent 8 years learning technical analysis, working my ass off to get a job on Wall Street. And then when I got there, I realized, maybe this isn't something that I want to do long term. And making that decision to change directions after all that time and effort is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But what I think helps in that decision is kind of having a general direction of where you're headed next. Third thing I learned is that having too little to do is just as bad as having too much to do. When I was an analyst, I was working 70 to 80 hours a week every week for 3 years straight. Before that, I was at Ernst & Young as a consultant and I was working massive hours there. Before that, I was in college and doing internships and had different jobs, so I was constantly working there. So for 8 years straight, I was fully booked. My schedule was packed. I had no room for pretty much anything. Then when I opened my schedule completely up and had no obligations, I kind of found myself drifting around. I wasted a lot of time just kind of like, oh, what am I going to do today? For me personally, I just found I need a little more structure, and finding the next thing to work on and just kind of having a general direction really helped with that. And the fourth thing I learned is that it's okay to stop and think. I think hustle culture has people programmed to move from thing to thing without necessarily thinking through, why they're doing it or if it makes sense long term or any of that. But once you have your answer, you need to go for it. Get the facts and information you need and make a decision. And I think I waited a little too long throughout the year to launch my YouTube channel just because I was overthinking things. I was distracted by other opportunities that were coming my way, and none of them felt right. So once I knew for a fact that I wanted to start a YouTube channel, which happened in the middle of last year, I should have just went for it instead of waiting until December. But it is what it is. Better late than never. I was still able to have a good year overall, but definitely would have started sooner. So overall, I'd say 2021 was a success, and now I have a strong foundation to build on in 2022. Speaking of 2022, let's get into some goals for this year. I think they can be summed up by just saying rebuilding my income streams, whether they be through this business or other things that I'm working on. Ultimately, I just need to figure out how do I generate an income of about $6,000 a month so that I can do this full time and still reach my long-term financial goals. So how I'm going to do that in the business plan video that I did somewhere over here, you can check out. I basically outlined some bullet points of how I'm ultimately going to build those income streams in this year. I'll share that list real quickly on screen right now and then also put a link in the description. You can check that full document out in terms of the business plan. So those are my yearly goals, but looking at a list like that and figuring out how to get from where I am today to where I want to be in 365 days seems very daunting. So what I do is I break it down into monthly goals. So in January, I'll share my list here of the things that I want to accomplish. You can see up top, I want to kind kind of finalize my production schedule and workflow for every platform. I want to figure out the branding a bit, get a little more consistent in terms of people recognizing my content across platforms. I want to launch a website with redirects for Linktree so that people can find my content a little easier, and also access affiliate links that I can start to monetize the audience. I also want to create my first digital product, something basic I can give out for free to just test Gumroad as a platform for distribution and for payments and things of that nature. And then also build further authority with my audience and grow my audience even further. I'll launch a new series which explores side hustles, sees which ones work, which ones don't, seeing if I can go from $0 to $100,000 just from doing things on the side in my free time. So I'm going to start with the basic ones that are super easy and accessible for anybody, like Amazon Mechanical Turk and other micro tasks, taking surveys, being a website tester, stuff like that. Technical analysis, so I've had a side project that I've been working on and kind of been half in, half out. I think I'm just gonna put markets aside and put my old professional cap aside for now and just focus on being a content creator. I don't want to spread myself too thin and be all over the place. I'd rather just focus on being the best content creator I can for this year and see where that goes. All right, CPA stuff. I finished the exams last quarter, but I'm waiting for them to verify my work experience before I can go ahead and submit my application. Hopefully that'll get done in January. Admin stuff, I'll get into it when I do the financials, but my solo 401k, basically I had to repay the loan early and find a different provider that offers loans, so that's a bit of a pain in the ass. And then I have a tax situation from last year. I responded to a notice from the IRS and they just haven't gotten back to me, and I've not followed up, so I got to figure that out because they owe me some money, even though they say I owe them some money. And then mental health, want to join a free or paid community of founders or content creators and just start building connections, because, just mentally, it's better to have a support network and people that are trying to do the same thing when you're trying to build something. So I got to find a different community to be part of, because the professional community of active investors that I was part of is not the same target audience or group that I'm trying to associate with now. And then finally, I have a list of people I want to reconnect with or connect with new people. Lastly, some other stuff. I got a planned Valentine's Day that's coming up next month. Happy girlfriend, happy life. Then I have some health related stuff here. I just have to get back on a better routine. I fell off the holidays. I got to renew my passport so I can travel next year. And then my girlfriend got me a PS5 for Christmas, so I want to make sure that I play once a week just to kind of take advantage of that gift and have some enjoyment. All right, so those are my January goals for the business. As you can see, it covers everything from creating content on a regular basis to improving my workflow on the back end, trying to figure out how to make content better and more efficiently, to figuring out a tax situation with the IRS. So it runs the gamut. When you're a content creator, you're not just focused on, delivering content to people, you're running a business and you have to treat it as such. So I think these goals are aggressive, but they set me up to slowly but surely accomplish the yearly goals that I set out for the business in the last video. All right, back to the financials page that I shared in the last video. I'll also include it in the description down below, but not much has changed here. So let's go to the summary sheet. As you guys can see, my net worth actually went up by $30,000. That's more of an accounting issue than anything. Basically, the solo 401k that I was using to fund the business, I took a loan against my assets. Well, the provider I was using said, hey, we're no longer allowing you to take loans against your balance, so you have to repay the loan, switch to a different provider, and then take the loan from them. So honestly, this just goes to show how important it is to have backup plans and different funding lines and credit lines available to you, because something like this might hit you as a business owner, and if I didn't have cash available to me to pay back the loan, then I would have had to take it as a taxable distribution and pay a bunch of penalties. Long story long is, that is the main financial impact last month. Switching over to the business income statement, so total expenses for the year were about 25 grand. Total pre-tax contributions were about $30,000 to my 401k. So my total net profit for the year and taxable income was about 26 grand. And after taxes, that left me with about, $20,000 or so. Here's the personal balance sheet. So one thing that I did have to do here is you're going to see that the 401k balance went up and my cash balance went way down. So what I needed to do to avoid having $0 in my checking account was take a balance transfer from one of my cards. It has a 2.99% APR till September of 2022. So basically, I'm just using this as kind of a bridge to pay my bills while I figure out the the solo 401k situation. And then monthly net cash flow, showing the variance here. Both my business and personal expenses for December were below budget, which is good, I guess. Student loan schedule, once again, payments have been pushed back, so I don't have to start paying them until May 2022, so I don't intend to. So that pretty much sums up the financial changes month over month. As you can see, the main issue was the 401k loan that had to be repaid. Minor inconvenience, but in the long term doesn't really matter. So I'm going to link this spreadsheet down below. You can check it out. This will no longer be updated. What I did was I created a new 2022 spreadsheet, which I'll also link down below, that we'll use for future updates. So again, going back to the summary sheet, we just went over all this. None of this changed. This is simply a copy of the last spreadsheet. The one thing I did add was some key performance indicators. Outside of financials, I want to make sure that my business is growing on the platforms that I'm using. I created a little bit of a tracker to identify the platforms that I'm on and some of the key inputs that I'm tracking. Here is the number of posts that I'm creating, so that's what I'm responsible for. And then what is the platform giving me back in terms of views, subscribers, and engagement. So up here, views are kind of a vanity metric. They don't really mean much. Getting a lot of views is great, but unless the person actually converts into a follower or engages with your content consistently, it's really not all that important to your business. Then from a conversion perspective, subscribers and followers is what I'm looking for. So did they actively take a step to say, I want to see more of their content? Then for engagement, we're looking at different metrics for each platform. It's not as clear cut. So for YouTube, it's watch time. Instagram, it's content interactions, which includes likes, comments, saves, and shares. TikTok, it's content interaction, which includes profile views, likes, comments, and shares. And then for Twitter, I'm going to just use the engagement rate in percentage that they give you in the analytics page. I'm not going to make it more complicated than that. And then on the right here, we have month over month growth rates. Then the only other change I made was to my monthly budget. So I basically did some playing around to see, do I even need to take the solo 401k loan, or could I simply get my expenses low enough that I could just side hustle or do a job on the side or generate enough income from the business itself in order to be able to pay my bills and give me a longer runway. So my budget from last year had a lot of nice to haves and cost about $5,500 a month in pre-tax income in order to sustain it. So I decided, let me create this new scenario where I strip down everything and just do the bare minimum of what it takes to survive. This includes taking out investing. This includes not paying back a solo 401k loan because I'm not going to take it. And what I ultimately found is that I could get my expenses down to about $2,500 a month in after-tax income, which is about $3,000 on a pre-tax basis. Basically half of what my previous budget was of around $5,500. So that gives me a kind of baseline to work with. But then I decided, I know I have some expenses coming up at the end of the year, and I don't necessarily want to not invest in myself at all in terms of my IRA or 529. So what if I just push those payments toward the end of the year? If instead of paying them on a monthly basis, I just invested all at once before the tax deadline next year. That would buy me 15 months to be able to grow my income enough so that I could afford to do that, as opposed to paying it on a monthly basis. On top of that, I also know I have some current liabilities that are coming due in the next 12 months. So I decided to add a scenario analysis to say, if I add back my investing as well as any current liabilities that I owe over the next 12 months, what would the budget look like then? So here we've got the self-employment tax that I owe. We've got the credit card 1 that I've been using with the promo APR. And then I've got the credit card 2 that I'm using the promo APR to provide me working capital in the near term while I figure out this solo 401k situation. So in order to cover those, I would need to make about another $2,000 on a pre-tax basis. So that brings me to about $5,000, which is, again, back to the original budget number. And then from there, what if I want to add to my Roth IRA and make up those catch-up contributions? That would add about another $650 a month. So all in, it comes to about $5,700, which is equal to the monthly net cash flow number from here, basically. But the only difference here is that at the end of this situation, I wouldn't have any debt. I wouldn't have the solo 401k loan. So yeah, I'm not really sure which approach I'm going to take. I got a couple months of cash on hand to cover my bills before I need to figure it out, but I'm thinking more and more that the lean approach is probably better. Knowing my tendencies to procrastinate, I think having to generate income along the way just to pay the bills and keep the lights on will probably light enough of a fire under my ass to be able to figure out how to make this business work and generate some income. So I think I'm leaning more towards that. I'll figure it out by the end of January or maybe February, but Yeah, I think the lean scenario is probably better. It's the true way of bootstrapping a company, figuring out how to make revenue, keep the lights on, so that you can scale it over time. Whereas the other situation, if I take the solo 401k loan, I have a year worth of runway. I don't have to generate any income if I don't want to, but it's risky because at the end of it, if I don't generate any income, one, I have no money for living expenses, and two, now I have this massive loan that I need to pay back. So I think the lean cash flow situation is a lot more difficult to execute. It'll be a lot more stressful, but I think it's probably the better business decision, and it'll ultimately get me further along than if I were to give myself a ton of runway by taking the solo 401k loan. Anyway, I don't know if any of that made sense. I hope it did, but overall, that's kind of where the business is over the last month. Things are good. I've launched on different platforms, creating content consistently, so things are progressing. The other thing for this specific video series, I'm gonna figure out a way to make it more clean cut and easier to follow. I think what I might do is turn it into kind of like a monthly presentation where I'm like presenting to my company's board of directors, and I have to just highlight the key points, what's actually changed, what matters, because right now there's a ton of raw data, it's very unorganized, and I'll still give you guys access to that. But for the average person to follow this, I think I really need to consolidate things and maybe put my consulting hat back on and just make a pretty PowerPoint deck that I can walk through. And yeah, I don't like this format whatsoever. I think the data that I have is good, and I think it's quality information, but it's just not presented in a way that's all that useful. So anyway, that's the update for this month. Things are good. Things are progressing. I've got a lot of goals to hit for 2022, so I better finish this video up and get back to work. In the meantime, if you made it to the end of this video, thank you. I appreciate it. You're a goddamn saint. The next update will be a lot more organized. I'm going to fix this format, but if you enjoy this type of transparency and the information I'm trying to share, click the like button down below, subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Comment down below anything you found interesting, or things that can be improved on. I'm sure there are a lot of them, but anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys back here for another video sometime soon.